Welcome to the art class.
Imagine waking up
Hmm.
every single morning and strapping a 70-inch flat-screen TV to your back.
Oh, yeah. Just a casual morning hike.
Right, and you're hiking up this steep dirt mountain in the middle of the brutal summer heat.
Hmm.
And you're not doing this for, like, a workout. You are doing it simply because you need to capture the exact way the afternoon sun hits a crowded dance floor.
Which is just a wild level of dedication.
It really is. Oh, and by the way, that flat-screen TV on your back, it acts like a giant sail catching the wind, and the surface is covered in wet oil paint.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you are desperately trying to protect it from dust and bugs and, stray elbows. Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a custom-tailored mission for you today. We are unpacking a historical script that essentially tells a tale of two absolute extremes.
Extreme joy and extreme pain.
Exactly. We are looking at the creation of what is widely considered the most joyful, vibrant painting in the world, and we're contrasting it with the devastating, agonizing physical reality of the artist's later life.
So we are going to spend some time today with Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and specifically, we are zooming in on the year 1876 and the creation of his masterpiece, Le Moulin de la Galette.
Such a famous piece.
It is. And the contrast between the man who painted that massive canvas and the man he would eventually become is, honestly, it's one of the most staggering realities in art history.
To really grasp the weight of this, we need to plant you in the scene. So the year is 1876. You are at the bottom of Montmartre in Paris. Renoir is 35 years old, and he's operating at the absolute peak of his physical health.
He had to be for what he was doing.
Right. He is about to undertake this massive physical and artistic feat, completely unaware of the physical devastation waiting for him in the future. And that canvas, I compared to a flat-screen TV. It was 131 by 175 centimeters.
Yeah, which is massive. A canvas of that size, heavily primed and stretched over a wooden frame, I mean, that weighs several kilograms.
Just dead weight on your back.
Exactly. Carrying that uphill, along with heavy wooden pallets, dozens of lead paint tubes, a collapsible easel, it's a severe feat of physical endurance. And you have to remember, Montmartre at this time was not the paved, heavily urbanized tourist hub with the white basilica that people visit today.
Right, it was totally different back then.
It was semi-rural. It was basically a steep, dusty village of windmills and dirt paths overlooking the city. And he did this hike every single day for months.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because why go through all that literal heavy lifting? I mean, I look at the logistics of this, and the logic just totally falls apart.
It sounds absurd on paper.
It does. He's climbing a hill with a massive sail of a canvas. Wouldn't a studio be infinitely more controlled? You avoid the wind, you avoid the changing weather, the bugs sticking to the wet oil paint.
Yeah, the bugs are a real problem with outdoor painting.
Right. So why not take a small notepad, make some quick sketches, know where the light falls, and then, walk back down the hill to a comfortable climate-controlled room to actually paint the thing.
Well, what's fascinating here is that the physical commitment to the actual location was the entire point of the exercise.
How do you mean?
He wasn't walking up that hill to document a scene the way like a journalist takes notes. He was going up there for absolute immersion. He was heading to the Moulin de la Galette, which was a gonguette.
A gonguette being essentially a cheap open-air tavern and dance hall, right?
Precisely. It was built directly into the garden of an old, still-working windmill at the top of the hill. And we really need to emphasize what kind of environment this was. The crowd was entirely working class.
So not high society.
Not at all. You had seamstresses, flower sellers, clerks, local students. These were people doing grueling manual labor 6 days a week in 1870s Paris.
Wow.
Yeah, they had exactly one day off, which was Sunday, and for an admission fee of just 3 sous.
Which was basically pocket change, right?
Literal pocket change. For that, they could get in, eat a tough brown bread called a galette, drink cheap wine, and dance.
And he isn't just observing these people from a safe distance either. He's hauling his flat-screen TE-sized canvas right into the middle of the dance floor.
Right, which was unlike most other Impressionists at the time. I mean, even though the Impressionists championed on plein air or outdoor painting, they usually compromised.
Oh, really? They didn't do the whole thing outside?
Very rarely for large pieces. They would do small, manageable studies outside, capturing the color and the light quickly, but then they would retreat to the studio to paint the final massive exhibition pieces.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but Renoir refused. He carried the final massive exhibition work directly to the source. He set his easel up right in the dirt, completely surrounded by the crowd. He demanded the real, unfiltered light, the real noise of working-class Paris, and the constant, unpredictable movement of the dancers.
Which sounds like an absolute nightmare for a painter trying to concentrate. I mean, you've got people bumping into your easel, spilling drinks, shouting over the band, kicking up dirt.
Chaos. Pure chaos.
But I suppose that's the trade-off, right? Because he insisted on being right there in the thick of it, he gets an energy you simply cannot fabricate in a quiet room. I'm looking at the painting right now, and the crowd feels so specific. Are these just random models he hired to stand around in the dirt for him?
No, not at all. Every significant figure you see in the foreground was a real, identifiable person from his community.
Wait, really?
Yeah. He would actually ask his friends to hold their positions at the tables or on the dance floor while the chaotic dancing happened all around them. So, in the foreground, sitting at the table with the glasses, you have his friends Frank Lamy, the painter Nora Galette, and the writer Georges Rivière. They were regulars.
That is so cool. There's a real sense of intimacy to it. Like the two women leaning on the table in the blue and pink striped dresses, they look like they're in the middle of a joke.
Yeah, those are two local sisters. Estelle, who was a seamstress in the neighborhood, and her sister Jean. And if you look to the left, there's a man in a yellow boater hat dancing with a woman in a pink dress.
Oh yeah, I see him.
That is Solares y Cardenas, a Cuban painter Renoir had befriended that very summer. So Renoir knew these people intimately. They were his peers, his muses, his drinking buddies.
But capturing his friends having a good time wasn't exactly embraced by the art world, was it? When he finally finishes this massive undertaking and shows it off, the establishment completely rejects it.
Oh, the reaction at the 1877 Impressionist exhibition was incredibly hostile.
Wow.
To understand why, you have to understand the establishment, the Académie des Beaux-Arts. The standard for high art was mythological, historical, or religious scenes. And technically, the paintings were expected to have a glassy, invisible finish. You weren't supposed to see the brushstrokes.
It had to look perfectly smooth.
Exactly. And the lighting was supposed to be dramatic, stable, and highly controlled, basically like a theater set.
And then Renoir gives them a blurry painting of working-class kids drinking cheap wine on a Sunday.
Right. He gives them a painting where the sunlight filters down through the leaves of the acacia trees above the dance floor. And as the wind blew the real trees in the garden, the light shifted, creating these dappled pools of pink, blue, and yellow sun across the dancers' faces and their dark coats.
It's so beautiful, though.
It is now, but back then. He painted shadows using deep blues and purples instead of black. The critics looked at those splotches of light and called the painting unstable. Some reviewers even likened the dappled sunlight on the dancing figures to grease spots on their clothes.
Grease spots. That's just mean. And calling it unstable in the high art world of 1877, that is a profound insult.
Yeah.
They're basically calling him technically incompetent, saying he doesn't know how to render a solid three-dimensional object.
They wanted classical solidity. They were terrified of shifting, broken light because it felt chaotic and informal.
Yeah, it broke all their rules.
But Renoir's defense was brilliant in its simplicity. He didn't write some long, pretentious manifesto about optics. He simply referred to the painting as Sunday. That was his rebuttal.
I love that.
He was telling the critics, this is what a Sunday afternoon actually looks like. Go outside and see for yourselves. He stated that a painting must be aimable, which translates to lovable or friendly. He argued that there were enough boring, unpleasant things in life, and art didn't need to add to them.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about all those specific people we just named. Estelle, the seamstress. Jean. Cardenas, the Cuban painter. Most of the names of the people in the background, the ones dancing in the middle distance or sitting under the trees, they were completely lost within a single generation.
Completely forgotten.
Yeah. Today, that garden is gone. The original dance hall ceased to exist a long time ago. The last person who danced there that afternoon has been dead for well over a century. The physical place and the people are completely erased from the earth, but that single specific afternoon survives perfectly intact on the canvas.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals the true ambition of Renoir's method. He didn't set out to paint a rigid historical document to preserve their names for eternity. He set out to preserve a specific quality of an afternoon. The honest condition of human life is that our names fade, our haunts disappear, our youth vanishes. By capturing the noise, the movement, and that unstable, dappled light, He immortalized the light itself.
It's incredible.
That is the true success of the painting. It still works today because it perfectly preserves the feeling of a Sunday afternoon, even if the people in it are ghosts to us now.
It's beautiful, but man, there's a deep, heavy melancholy to it when you zoom out and look at what happened to the man holding the brush. The sheer physical vitality we've been talking about, climbing that dirt hill in Montmartre, hauling that massive canvas in the summer of 1876, standing for hours in the sun, it serves as this stark, heartbreaking contrast to the medical reality that would come to define the rest of his life.
It really does, because 16 years after he painted the Moulin de la Galette in 1892, Renoir began suffering from severe joint pain. He was eventually diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis,
Which is an autoimmune disease where the body's immune system essentially misfires and attacks the lining of its own joints. It causes painful swelling that can eventually result in bone erosion and severe joint deformity.
and the progression in Renoir's case was aggressive and unrelenting. We track a slow, agonizing decline. By the early 1900s, both of his hands were significantly deformed.
Oh, that's awful.
By 1910, his fingers had permanently curled inward toward his palms. The cartilage degraded, and his wrists partially fused together.
Fused together.
Yes, the fundamental tool of a painter, the fine motor control required to grip a brush and manipulate it with the wrist and fingers, it was completely taken from him. He could not hold a brush in the conventional way ever again.
Wait, hold on. I'm looking at his late works in the source material right now, and they are prolific. They are incredibly joyful, loose, and full of vibrant reds and oranges. How on earth is it physically possible that a man whose hands are essentially fused shut into fists could continue to create anything, let alone hundreds of massive paintings?
It required total, uncompromising adaptation. First, the environment had to change. The damp cold of Paris made the joint pain unbearable, so he relocated south to the Mediterranean coast, to Cagnes-sur-Mer, seeking warmth.
Okay, that makes sense.
He lost the ability to walk and was confined to a wheelchair, which was specially fitted with an easel. And since the fingers couldn't pinch or grip, he had to engineer a completely new way to paint. He would have the brush tucked between his curled, stiff fingers.
Wow.
And when his grip failed entirely, he relied on assistants, often his family or servants, to literally slide the brush into his hand or bind it to his forearm with cloth strips.
So his hand is rendered useless, and he is painting with his arm completely bound. That fundamentally changes the mechanics of how paint is applied to a canvas.
Entirely.
Yeah.
Because the wrist was fused, he lost the ability to make small, flicking strokes. He had to use his entire arm as a lever.
Oh, I see.
The fulcrum shifted from the wrist to the elbow and the shoulder. This mechanical change forced his technique to evolve. The strokes became broader, more sweeping. The pressure applied to the canvas was different. It demanded a completely new physical relationship with his art.
That is just mind-blowing.
Yet, operating in constant, excruciating pain, he painted hundreds of late works. Sun-drenched landscapes of the Provençal hills, massive glowing nudes, portraits of his family.
There is a legendary quote attributed to him during this era. Henri Matisse, who was a younger artist at the time, visited him in the South, and watching Renoir work through such obvious agony, asked him why he continued to torture himself.
Fair question.
Right, and Renoir supposedly replied, "The pain passes, the beauty remains." Whether he delivered that as a grand philosophical pronouncement, or if it was just a casual observation to a friend, it perfectly distills the ethos of his entire life. But still, the willpower required to sit in a wheelchair, have your crippled hands bound with cloth, and paint joyous, sun-drenched landscapes. It just boggles the mind.
Well, it makes complete sense if you realize that tying the brush to his forearm wasn't a departure from who he was.
What do you mean?
It wasn't a different activity from lugging that giant canvas up the hill in Montmartre decades earlier. Visually, from the outside, a healthy man hiking a mountain and a paralyzed man in a wheelchair look like total opposites.
Right.
But internally, psychologically, it was the exact same devotion to the art, the same relentless impulse to capture beauty. It was just happening inside a different, failing body. The physical cost changed, but he never used the pain as an excuse to alter the mission.
And we follow this relentless bandage devotion all the way to its ultimate conclusion, the final year of Renoir's life. It's 1919. He's 78 years old. He is incredibly frail in unyielding pain, and he makes the journey to Paris. He is wheeled through the halls of the Louvre.
Which is an incredibly rare occurrence. Most artists only dream of entering the Louvre posthumously.
Exactly. He's there to see his own legacy. Over the years, the French government had acquired several of his paintings from the estate of Gustave Caillebotte. Caillebotte was a fellow painter and wealthy collector. Interestingly, Caillebotte was the one who bought Moulin de la Galette straight from Renoir shortly after that 1877 exhibition.
Right when all the critics were tearing it apart.
Yes, right when they were calling it unstable.
Caillebotte recognized its genius immediately. He acted as a patron to many of the Impressionists, keeping them afloat. When Caillebotte died, he bequeathed his massive collection to the French state, which effectively forced the conservative artistic establishment to finally accept the Impressionists into the national museums.
They couldn't ignore them anymore.
Exactly. So by 1919, Renoir's controversial painting of a working-class dance hall had made its way into the hallowed halls of the Louvre.
So Renoir is wheeled through the grand rooms, and he sees Moulin de la Galette hanging on the wall. The painting that required hauling a canvas up a dirt hill, the painting the critics sneered at, is now hanging alongside established historical masters like Delacroix, Corot, and Velázquez.
That must have been an unbelievable moment.
It is the ultimate, undeniable validation of his life's work. He sees it, he absorbs it, and then he returns home to the south of France. And in December of 1919, he finally succumbs to a lung infection.
But he worked until the literal last day.
He did. On the exact day he died, he was painting. His final work was not a massive outdoor scene. It was a small, manageable still life of anemones, bright flowers pulled right from his own garden.
Wow.
He painted it with that sweeping arm technique, the brush wedged into his destroyed hand. When he finished, he reportedly set the brush down and said, "I think I'm beginning to understand something about it." Then he passed away.
The hands barely functioned at all by that point, but the work was completed.
So what does this all mean? The symmetry of this narrative is just breathtaking. You start with this massive, crowded, wildly energetic canvas of his youth, carried up a mountain by a healthy 35-year-old in the prime of his life.
Yeah.
And the story ends with a tiny, quiet painting of picked flowers done in isolation on a deathbed by an elderly man whose hands are locked shut.
This raises an important question, and it's a profound philosophical dilemma that historians, critics, and art lovers have to grapple with when viewing his body of work.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about another famous, massive piece he did, the 1881 painting Luncheon of the Boating Party. It's another vibrant, joyous canvas full of his friends eating and drinking by the river.
I would love that one.
But by 1881, the very first subtle symptoms of his arthritis, the early aches, the slight stiffness may have already begun to show up, even though the devastating official diagnosis was still a decade away.
The shadow of the disease is just starting to creep in around the edges of the frame.
So the dilemma is this. When you stand in a museum and look at Moulin de la Galette or Luncheon of the Boating Party, when you look at the pure joy, the dappled sunlight, the perfect, carefree Sunday afternoon, does knowing about the agony that was coming change how you view those early paintings?
That's a great point.
Does the sheer happiness in the painting feel more valuable or perhaps more desperate because you, the viewer, know about the wheelchair and the bandages that were waiting for him?
Wow. Does our knowledge of his tragic future fundamentally alter or ruin the innocence of the painting?
Or does it impose a tragic narrative onto a canvas that it never actually possessed in the first place?
I think it is crucial for us to realize that the overwhelming power of Moulin de la Galette is that it exists entirely, stubbornly, in the present tense.
Absolutely.
It is not a nostalgic painting. When he was 35, carrying that giant canvas up Montmartre, he wasn't trying to capture his youth before it faded. He wasn't rushing to preserve his hand dexterity against a future loss because he had absolutely no idea there would be a loss.
Right. There is no shadow of the future in that paint. There is no premonition of the wheelchair hidden in the broken brushstrokes of the acacia leaves. It is simply, wonderfully, people dancing in good light.
Perfectly said.
The painting's authority comes from the fact that he went up that hill because the afternoon itself was worth the massive physical effort for absolutely no other reason than the joy of the moment.
And for you listening, I think that is the most relevant, powerful takeaway from this deep dive. It is absolute proof that immense joy and intense devotion can exist purely in the moment, completely independent of whatever the future holds.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Renoir didn't need to know his tragic future to make his present moment profoundly beautiful. The beauty was the goal right then and there.
The beauty was the end in itself. And the work continued through the agony later, not as a tragedy to be pitied, but as a stubborn continuation of that exact same devotion.
As we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, inspired by how the source text concludes. Think about your own life right now. Think of something you do that costs you deeply today. Maybe it costs you a massive amount of time, or draining emotional energy, or it's just physically incredibly difficult.
Ask yourself if the cost itself is the point.
Exactly. For Renoir, the grueling physical weight of that giant canvas, the exhausting climb up the dirt hill in Montmartre, the wind knocking the easel around those, weren't just obstacles standing in the way of his art.
No, they were part of it.
The weight of the canvas was the ultimate proof that the Sunday afternoon was worth capturing in the first place. So, does the burden you carry prove the value of what you're doing?
It is a profound question to carry with you this week.
Think about your hill and think about your canvas. Keep climbing. We'll be back with another deep dive soon.